Good morning, people. Yesterday, when Martin was here, I mentioned I have difficulty in getting the phone on balanced, like a level. It's like off level, and it's off level today as well. And I told him that before it was automatic, that it was always level as far as I realized or as far as I thought. And he suggested maybe it's because the gimbal is old and it no longer levels perfectly. So I don't know if anybody else knows about that, because that might be true. I do not know if it's true. And maybe I need to change the gimbal. I guess even the level on an apparatus like this can be dependent on wear and tear. So I hope you're all waking up, or maybe some of you on the west coast of the Americas are heading to bed and you're seeing the sunrise here at the Sea of Galilee as your good night moment. It's a crisp, fresh morning today. There's a little breeze, maybe that's increasing the chill factor a little. I remember many times when we were children, my mother would repeat a line quoting her father, our grandfather. And I don't ever remember him saying that. Somehow I don't remember saying it. Maybe it was because my mother had repeated it sufficiently that we would be embarrassed to have the behavior that he denounced. And then last night when I was reading the gospel passage for today, it struck me, wow, this line is coming from John chapter 8. I had never registered that fact. And my grandfather passed away to eternal life after I had joined the seminary. So I was already done with high school when I joined and followed this calling almost 51 years ago. And so I would have had plenty of opportunity also to have heard it from my grandfather. We often did things together, especially at harvest time in August, bringing in the hay. This is the Franciscan site of Magdala here. Father Timotheus has put in a lot of little shrubbery, and so it has a green touch to it now. Very nice. So let me dig out this line for you. I'm going to open up the other text here so I can give it to you exactly. It's a little bit into the conversation. The conversation is getting more tense by the day. We're obviously leading into the passion, into the consummation of the conflict, of the eradication of Jesus from the map, as the intent of the authorities seems to develop and express itself more ardently each day. If I glorify myself, my glory is worth nothing. That's the line. If I glorify myself, my glory is worth nothing. And the line my mother used to always use was, self-praise is no praise. So obviously that was when a child was giving themselves praise. boasting. My mother mentioned that so often that so often, I don't know, a bunch of times I remember. It wasn't just once. And it obviously registered with me and stayed with me. And we would avoid, obviously, we would avoid saying stuff in our own praise then, because it became a behavior that was, I imagine most parents would do that with their children. But there it is in John chapter 8. Maybe there are other cases in the scriptures before that again. But at least it's there. Do you hear the calves calling out to their mothers? Just not very far from here. Maybe we can wander over there. They're not far away. Here, they've cut the grass. And the other part of the line then continues. If I glorify myself, my glory is worth nothing. Self-praise is no praise, right? But it is my Father who glorifies me. And that's very nice to affirm other people, but also not to give them praise that's not real. That's not based on also contributions on reality, work, qualities. When you hear somebody singing very beautifully, you praise them. Playing music very well, child mastering a violin. In the case of Jesus, it's the miracles he's doing that's the certification. In a way, that's a beautiful insight or commentary that Jesus makes, because he's saying then that everything comes from the Father. The source of all blessing, as we see in the letter of James. And speaking of fathers, today we have Father Abraham. And the word for father is Abba, or Av. Av is father. Exalted Father Abraham. And Abraham is 99 when this conversation takes place. It's in chapter 17 of Genesis. It's this amazing covenant God makes, and it's when circumcision is formally accounted for, explained. It's a covenant. I just read a note that circumcision was a very frequent usage in the cultures here in the, some fish just moved there, in the cultures in this region, but now it became the sign of the covenant. And then Paul would comment on that later on, that it's not the circumcision in the flesh but in the spirit that is important, because our hearts have to lose their selfishness to be circumcised in spirit. The flesh is to no avail. I'm walking here on millions of shells. I'm not sure if there are as many as the grains of sand on the seashore. In that language of the covenant. So Abraham is actually mentioned in all the readings today in the Psalm. In the first reading, obviously, of Genesis 17, and then Jesus brings up Abraham as well in the conversation. Or maybe it's those who are opposing him bring it up. And Abraham becomes a major feature of the gospel conversation today. So Abraham is all over the place. And we call him our father in faith. And today also there's talk of the Abrahamic religions, referring then to Judaism, Christianity and Islam. Because all appeal to Abraham. And actually, it's not in today's reading excerpt from chapter 17, but it's there also that there's a very special blessing for Ishmael. Abraham intercedes with God for Ishmael. And actually, Ishmael is also circumcised, and Isaac is not yet born. Isaac will be born within that covenant. And then there's a huge statement that Jesus makes about himself, which actually is deeply connected to the prologue of the Gospel of John. Before Abraham was, I am. There's one feature in this very tense conversation of great stubbornness, of great pride. Pride is not the way for the human being, because we can be proud of things, good things, good days work done, but to be self-sufficient in that sense of pride, to be so self-assured interiorly, to humility is the better way. To recognize that everything is given. To recognize also our defects and faults. It would be pride also to think that I'm so bad, because pride is not just boasting about big things I have or that I'm able, but pride would also be if I am always considering only the negative and what I lack, and think that I can't improve, and that nothing will change, and that I'm lost, that there's no hope. That's also an attitude of pride, because God is God and He can do everything for us. He can transform us. We just need to be humble and recognize and open our hearts. In the tussle we have with God, and the wrestling we have with God in our lives, as we struggle sometimes with His will, with His revelation, we find ourselves in that opposition, in that tension of acceptance, that difficulty to yield before God, to accept a change of perspective about our health, about life, about a loved one, and bereavement, that we're not in charge of reality, that reality is a gift for us. that we're never alone, that God is always with us. To yield before God. To be humble. Abraham fell prostrate before God. That's where he receives the covenant, in a position of humility. And our strength is that the Lord remembers his covenant forever, because sometimes we forget it. The psalm repeats this. Recall the wondrous deeds that he has wrought. Oh, look at the rainbow. Wow, 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 wow. I didn't expect to see a rainbow this morning. Normally we see the rainbow, at least most of the time, to the east, and now we're seeing it to the west at sunrise. Got a beautiful rainbow. That's probably a nice note to finish on. That reminder of the covenant, speaking about the covenant. Wow. The Lord remembers his covenant forever, the covenant of Noah. And the scholars see traces of the covenant of Noah in this covenant in Genesis 17 with Abraham, in the language, the concepts. Wow, 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 wow. What a delight. And there's a rainbow against a blue sky. I don't know if that's very frequent. You normally see rainbow on cloud only. What a beautiful gift this morning. Hey guys, I'm going to say goodbye. This has been a wonderful day. We'll turn around again to the sun. Well, we'll do it this way here with the selfie moment. And then we'll finish off with the rainbow. And then maybe I can catch some rainbow on the Instagram for our good Instagrammers. Wow, that's so beautiful. God bless you, people.